So I legit only read one book for the month. All right, so this is going to be a wrap up / TBR because, like I said in the intro, I literally only read one book, completed one book, I should say. So I figured it did need its own video. You know, I didn't want to do an entire video just for one book. So I said, okay, I'm going to talk about the book that I finished, and then we'll go into my TBR. So if that's something you're interested in, please stay tuned. All right, so I don't currently have the book that I finished, but I'm just going to go ahead and place it right here. So I finished Carrie by Stephen King. I have thoughts, and I don't currently have the book in my possession anymore because I did check it out from the library, so I already returned it. Just to sum it up, Carrie is basically about a high school aged girl who is tortured and bullied, not just by her peers, but also she has a tumultuous kind of home life as well. So, but what they don't know about her is that she's actually quite gifted, and she has the gift of telekinesis, or she's telekinetic, however you want to describe it. And she then ensues her sweet revenge, if you will. Like I said in my November TBR, it was very jarring. This was my first Stephen King book and somewhat my first thriller, really. I didn't know what to expect going into it. So I was very much like, okay, this is a lot. Some of the scenes were very vivid and, like I said, jarring. So anyways, I did take some extensive notes about this book. I had a lot of thoughts on it. We want to just talk about the story for what it is. It's an okay story. I don't know necessarily why it's so much of a classic, but I can see it being a good story when it first came out. But in today's time, it's an okay read. It was an okay read. I think I rated it 3.5 stars. I was only able to rate it 3 stars on Goodreads, but my real rating was like 3.5. It was okay. Like, would I reread it? Probably not, but it wasn't bad. You know, let's talk about the writing style of this book. I enjoyed his writing style for the most part. There were certain elements about it that I really, really enjoyed. For example, I don't know if there's a name for this type of writing style, but he would use parentheses a lot, whether in the midst of him describing and as well as in the midst of dialogue to kind of give further context and or thoughts, like exact thoughts that were being expressed that were not said, right? And I enjoyed that because I felt like it did give, whether it was the dialogue or description of the scene, I feel like it gave it more substance. Whereas if he had left it out, I feel like there would have been chunks missing from the story. So I enjoyed that. But I also enjoyed the fact that he would include, and this is spoiler free. He would also include kind of like articles, if you will, articles or like news excerpts to also bring more context to the story. And it was kind of like a back and forth. You would be in the present moment and then also getting future news or future articles kind of describing back to what transpired. Even though I enjoyed his writing style, I almost felt like it was too much going on. So for someone who probably, like myself, who had never read Stephen King, it was a little all over the place. And in a lot of ways, I wish he would have been more concise about how he wanted to tell the story versus kind of this back and forth kind of element to it. Or at the very least, I think he should have found a better way to clarify where he was in the story, because sometimes it was a little confusing jumping from time to time. from present to future and future to back. You know, it was kind of weird. But in regards to the story, I think it was very clear in the storytelling of Carrie of why things came to be. We got a lot of background information on Carrie as well as her upbringing, her school life. You know, it was very clear where the story was heading. We knew that it was heading, we knew very early on that it was leading toward destruction. But in which way, we didn't know. But we knew that this could only end up being bad. So I really enjoyed I really enjoyed the pace of it and the leading up to the climax. But what I did not enjoy was the ending of this book. I felt like we had been on a roller coaster, if you will, the entire book. You know, it was definitely a ride. And I felt like I was very disappointed with how he chose to end the book. And I'm trying not to spoil anything for you if you have not read it. But it left so much to the imagination. I feel like some people may like that because it'll have you kind of interpret it how you want to. But I just felt like there was a lot of holes in the story. I feel like there were a lot of characters that were involved in the plot that it didn't make sense. And we really didn't get any full understanding of how they resonated to Carrie. You know what? Okay, let me get into it because I feel like I'm trying to describe where I'm coming from and it's not really making any sense. So if you do not want to be spoiled, I'll leave a timestamp here telling you where to come back to kind of check back in so that we can continue on with this. I didn't like how he ended this fucking book. Like, what the hell? Okay, first off, like I said, I understood how we got to where we were. Bullied school life, no support really from her teachers, her principal. You know, the principal kind of had her back, and then the teacher also kind of felt bad about it, but it's still not enough to really impact Carrie's life up until that point, right? Then she goes home, and then she has to deal with more bullshit from her super religious mother. That didn't help at all. She was freaking mentally, physically, emotionally abused. I understood how we got to where we were. Now, what disappointed me was the ending of this. What's the girl's name? What's the girl's name? Sue. The Sue girl who basically tried to do Carrie a solid by hooking her up with her boyfriend for him to take her to the dance and all that good stuff. I knew that was going to be a problem. From the minute she hatched that damn plan, I said, oh no, here we go. This is about to be some bullshit. And I understand it probably was good intentioned, but like, anytime you do something out of like pity for someone, it never turns out right. Just don't do it. Like, you're better off just letting things be than thinking you're helping, but really you're making the situation worse. Like, you know, but anyways, I mean, granted, Sue didn't know that old girl had hatched her own damn plan of revenge on Carrie, but that's besides the point. I didn't understand, and maybe this was something I missed in regard to the story. So if I did miss something, please let me know down below, because I was really lost when it came to the end. Because I'm like, okay, you have a girl who was trying to be helpful, you know, and really highlight Carrie's life by having an experience she probably would not have experienced otherwise, right? But I didn't understand the telekinesis connection between the two of them. Like, where did that come from? And how did that make sense in regards to the story? I understand if possibly they're both gifted, but why her? Like, why? What was the background behind that? Like, is it just because they shared the same type of gift? Or was there more? I'm trying to understand. Let me see. Yeah, I really didn't understand that connection to Sue Snell. Like, what was the point of that? as far as telekinesis goes. Like, she was able to have this knowing that Carrie did it, right? That set the gym ablaze. She then also knew that she killed her mother. How? Like, again, if you want to use the whole maybe they're both gifted, fine, okay. But still, even if they both were gifted with telekinesis and were able to hear each other's thoughts or talk to each other, you know, telepathically, what was the point? Like, and I almost felt like we needed a second part to this book so that we can expand on that story. But obviously, Carrie died at the end, as well as her mother died at the end. So it's like, I just really didn't understand. She used the gift to lead her to her, you know, in her final waking breath. And it just didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, what was the point of all this? If you understand what that meaning was about, please put me on. Please explain that to me, because I was lost. I was absolutely lost. Also, besides the whole Sue thing, I really wish he would have expanded on the gift. I felt like the gift was just kind of thrown in there to cause destruction, but we really didn't get any insight on the actual gift itself, which I think would have been a fascinating story. That's just my take on that. But overall, like I said, as much as there were certain parts of this book I enjoyed, I definitely felt like this book felt to me like Stephen had just, you know how in school you used to have to brainstorm for the paper you were writing or whatever it is, the piece of writing you were doing, and you would just list out all your fantastic ideas that you want to talk about. But you would then have to narrow it down and choose certain elements that you wanted to expand on, right? But it's almost like Stephen King took every single wonderful idea he ever had listed and put it into one story. And so it just felt like a jumbled mess. Every element would have been a wonderful story on its own, but yet he chose to put it all into one story and try to make it make sense. It was just too much going on. So I don't know if this is Stephen King's usual style or if this is just one of his early on books and that's why it was not really refined. But that is my thought on Carrie. All right, so let's get into my December TBR. I'm going to start with the books I had already started reading last month that I didn't get a chance to finish. First, we have The Godfather by Mario Puzo. I'm almost halfway through it at this point. This has been such a like slow burn type of read to me. I wouldn't say it's been boring, but very slow to say the least. Thus far, I don't know. If that's any indication to how I feel about the book. Oh my gosh. Like, for real. Like, this is about Don Corleone and his family, who's pretty much the mafia, if you will, if that's what you want to call it. And we follow basically him and his family in the business. Typical mafia stuff, alliance and allegiance and loyalty and family and greed and, you know, action. And as much as the story is unfolding, it's really not exciting at all, in my opinion. It's I wouldn't say boring, but it's not. It's almost like everything that's happened up until this point I've been able to predict. And so for that reasoning, it is boring. I've been totally disappointed. There have been a few different altering events that have happened during this book thus far, and I've either predicted it or I've been like, oh, okay. The bottom line is I'm just not invested in the story. I'm not invested in the family. I'm not invested in any of the characters. No one really sticks out to me and no one makes me feel connected. So when events happen, I'm like, oh, okay, you know. So because it's been such a slow burn, what I ended up doing was picking up the next book, which is Moxie by Jennifer Mathieu. This is the book I ended up picking up next because I was so bored by The Godfather. This is basically about another teenage girl. I think it's somewhat of a coming of age type of story about a teenage girl who's basically kind of coming into her own as a young lady, and she's just kind of over the treatment that her and other girls experience at the school, and she's basically like, enough is enough. I'm going to do something about it, basically. And she's kind of taken it upon herself to be the voice, to kind of speak up and speak out about the injustices she's feeling. And thus far, I haven't read too much of it, but thus far it's pretty entertaining. So I'm like, okay, this is definitely breaking up that monotonous kind of feeling I was getting from The Godfather. So it's been like an easy breezy type of read for me. So I'm excited to actually finish this one. Because I still wasn't making too much headway into The Godfather, I decided to pick up a Game of Thrones. And the same exact feeling, the same exact feeling that I had with The Godfather, I had with this instantly. I'm starting to realize I'm one of those people where if it doesn't capture me within the first few pages, I'm not interested. Like, and that's how I felt about this. I read, let me see. Did I even read the prologue? I read through the prologue, and then I think I started the first, I guess, chapter, if you want to call it that. But I was so fucking bored. So I was like, oh my gosh, no, I was kind of devastated because I'm like, this is not happening again. I can't have this happen again. Because I was like, I can't believe this is happening again. Like, I'm bored again. Like, maybe I should just stick it out and keep reading because maybe it'll get better with time, but I don't know. But this is also, on the TBR. We'll see. And then last but not least, from my November TBR that I also started reading is another Stephen King, The Shining, which I know is another classic by Stephen that people like and hold in high regards. So this is about how much I've read. I've read more of this than I did of the Game of Thrones. So, and I was not mad at what I read thus far. Like I said, I don't think Stephen King has a problem with pacing at all. He had no problem, grasping my attention. It's just how the story is going to unfold for me that's going to be what I'm looking at. I wasn't mad at how this story started, and I'm actually intrigued to finish this as well. From last month's TBR, if I were to make a prediction, I would say that these two will be the ones that I probably will finish reading this month for sure. Maybe. Because, who knows. So I have 3 new books for this new month of December that I also wanted to read. First one being You Are a Badass: How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life by Jen Sincero. I've heard so many good things about this book years ago, and I wanted to read it back then, and I just didn't get a chance to get around to doing it. So, as I've stated in my previous TBR, I am a fan of self-help books. I find that you can always gain a little bit of insight and knowledge from self-help and really great tools that you can utilize in your own life. So I'm hoping that that is what I can gain from reading this. I'm always thinking about improving my life and improving my livelihood, my way of being. So I'm really excited to read this. Second book I have, I know what I said about YA. I know. But when I started to read this one last month, it reminded me why I used to love YA so much. So, with that being said, I picked up Obsidian by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Now, I know this is a beloved YA book. I know people have raved about this series, very much so. And this is one of those books that I did not get a chance to read when everybody was in love with it. I'm really excited to see if it's any good, you know? I think that this is one of those hate to love type of tropes from YA. So I'm interested. I'm interested to see what this is about and see if it lives up to the hype, basically. And then last but not least, I have Dead Witch Walking by Kim Harrison. Now, this was another book that I found amongst those lists that I was talking about on Goodreads. This is not YA. I want to say that this is an actual adult fiction. I want to say that this fell under like horror, thriller, sci-fi. I could totally be wrong about that. But when I was going through the list, this one actually really stood out to me. It had a pretty decent rating. And I was like, okay, I'm interested. What is this about? I want to say that this is about a witch who's a bounty hunter, but she ends up getting a bounty put on her own head, and she then has to go on the run with a well-known like vampire of the time. I thought that sounded interesting to me, so I was like, okay, I'll pick that up. That sounds like a fun, action-packed type of read. So those are all the books that I plan on reading this December. Hopefully I'll be able to read more than just the one book that I did last month. But truth be told, I'm actually quite proud of my one book that I read, because the fact that I hadn't read a novel in like 2 years, and I really committed myself to at least finishing one book, if anything, and I did. So, small progress, but it's progress nonetheless. So I'll take it. But like I said, hopefully I'll be able to read more than one. But with the holiday season, work has gotten extremely busy for me, as well as even in my own personal life. I've been doing a lot of cooking and spending time with my family. So it is what it is, If you have read Carrie by Stephen King, please let me know your thoughts on that book, because that book was very disappointing to me, to say the least. So I'm really curious to know what your thoughts were. Also, if you've read any of the books that I've mentioned for this December TBR, also let me know. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you liked them, disliked them. Let me know if there are any books that are similar that you can suggest to me that you think that I would like instead. Anything, leave me some feedback. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Go ahead and like and subscribe if you would like to see more book related content. And that's it. And I'm out.